Episode number 21 of Making a Case. Is black culture the problem? Let's get it. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Making the Case. We're on episode number 21. We're dwindling down the first season of Making the Case. I am your host, none other than Dr. Jacob Isom, author, educator, speaker, entrepreneur, a little bit of everything, right? You'll have to excuse me. I am fighting a bug that then came on and that won't just go away. So if I sound a little bit different, that is the reason why. But the show must continue. Okay. I'm gonna drop that content on you and for you. All right. So hopefully you can hear me clearly. And you don't have to turn your volume up. You can still hear me very well. Okay. Of course, we had two channel norms. One, we attack points and not people, and two, we don't do all the cussing and derogatory stuff. This is a professional space over here. All right. Episode number 21. Sorry, I keep blinking over and over. Something just popped in my eye. Is black culture the problem? So let's get into our opening statement. Now I do want to say this. Now I don't feel like I have to, give any caveats to the following statements I'm about to make, but I do think it's important for me to let people know that this is an educational channel. This is an accountability channel. So any topic that I address on any episode is not to demean, demoralize, to harm, to put down any people, person, group, or culture. It's simply to bring witness and bring attention to the fact that there's things that we need to be more cognitive of and actually pay attention to what it is that we need to change. So, with that being said, the title of today's episode is Black Culture the Problem. It derives from the simple fact that there's a lot of, and it may be due to a lot of imagery, but I'm here to make the case that it's not just imagery that is the problem with Black culture. It's things that we do on a day-to-day basis, on a consistent basis, that brings harm to our families, that bring harm to how we treat and view one another. So with that being said, I want to make sure that you understand that the pieces of evidence that I'm gonna bring up, this is historic, right? This has been going on decade after decade. And of course, we've been talking about it, but we need to bring attention and shed light on why is it that we continue to deal with the same issue time after time after time, right? So, the three pieces of evidence that I have today is something that is one could say systematic, right? Is something that we've definitely talked about before. And when I say we, I'm talking about as a society, as a culture, as a whole, right? These topics are things that we've addressed. And so, me addressing it by no means do I have the solution, but I will say that I like to attack things from a different standpoint, or at least put a different spin on things and give a different perspective. So, today's episode is going to do just that, give my perspective and lend my lens on what do I think is the problem with Black culture and why it seems to continue. All right. So, without further ado, we're going to get into our first piece of evidence of why I feel like Black culture could possibly be the problem. Let's get into it.
accomplished in you run through the whole no you 2013 the fabric
all right. I think you guys kind of get the picture. So we'll just stop it at that point. But this is my first piece of evidence that I want to show you. We start off with a banger, right? So if you haven't read the Monahan report, for those of you that are interested, I say you should take a look at it. If you don't know what's in it, you should definitely check that out. And maybe we might do a video just strictly on that report when it's talking about the breakdown of the black family and what's going on in the black community and black culture. So essentially what Thomas Salt is talking about is we're talking about black culture that we need to be holding accountable and we need to address, which is true. Now, we can talk about the history of white superiority. We can talk about the KKK. We can talk about Jim Crow laws. We can talk about slavery. We can talk about all those things that have been historically against African Americans for decades, right? And all of those is true. Anybody in their right mind would never deny that. But we also have to say there are a lot of self-inflicting wounds that we have. And to this day, we're still doing some things that are not in our best interest, right? So like when he addressed the culture when it comes to music, right? When we talk about hip hop, there are certain things that we intentionally put out there that sells, but that is destructive to us, right? I see kids every day that are a direct reflection of the culture that they come from. And it's not a positive image, right? So we have to start addressing these things from it happening inside versus always playing the victim and saying, well, these are the things. Because when I look at these podcasts and I hear other people talk, all I hear is the white man, the system, the this, the that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, when are we going to stop and take accountability, right? When are we going to say, you know what? It's time for us to take our communities back. It's time for us to police ourselves. It's time for us to build up infrastructure and business and build institutions that are strictly for the progress and health and benefit of black people, right? As we once did during the time where there was more racism, more discrimination, etc., right? So I think that's all Thomas Sall is trying to get at. Like, and I always talk about it's a mentality, right? So we have to understand that there are self-inflicted wounds. Two things can be true at the same time. You can be hurting yourself and somebody else can be hurting you. It happens all the time. All right. So that was just my first piece of evidence. Let's get into the evidence number two. All right. So for my second piece of evidence of why the black family, or I should say, excuse me, why black culture is the problem is because of the breakdown of the black family. See, I got ahead of myself, right? There's no secret, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the different points we've been talking about for a while. I'm just going to lend my lens and my perspective to it. But the black family has been in decline ever since the 60s, right? And the reason why we focus a lot on the 1960s because before then, the black family was together, right? We had a very high marriage rate, right? Black men and black women were married in the household together, right? The 60s was a very turbulent time period, even though you had the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, things of that nature. You also saw the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, right? As well as the rise and the fall of the Black Panther Party, even though the Black Panther Party really didn't dissolve until like the early 70s. But there was a lot of things going on in the 60s, right? So that's the reason why we focus on the 60s because before then we seen black man and black woman together, just in case you was curious. So with this piece of evidence, I'm focused on the black family and this article which comes from the platform called Reason. Never heard of it. First time going over content from this platform. And the article is called "A Black Family in 1965 and Today." So it's kind of doing a little comparison of what went on in the 1960s versus today and kind of how that breakdown happened. So let's just get into it without further ado. All right. The breakdown of the black family is a sensitive topic, though it's not new and it's not in dispute. President Barack Obama, who grew up with an absent father, often urges black men to be responsible parents, which, by the way, black men are the most involved by race as far as parents. So let's dispel with that myth, that stereotype, right? Nor is there any doubt that African American children would be better off living with their married parents. Kids who grow up in households headed by a single mother are far more likely than others to be poor, quit school, get pregnant as teens, and end up in jail. But these factors were once inflammatory. 50 years ago, next month, a Labor Department official named Daniel Patrick Monahan published a paper titled "The Negro Family: The Case for National Action," which argued that a tangible of pathology afflicting black communities had emerged because the Negro family in the urban ghettos is crumbling. His key fact: nearly 1/4 of black babies were born to unwed mothers. Now, that's just a fact that we see the numbers, right? So we can't dispute the fact that, well, the reason why a lot of people in poor situations, because if you only have one parent, that's one income, usually the father disciplinarian. So it's just a whole host of other issues that come with coming from a single parent household, particularly when it's a mother. He was accused of blaming the victim, but he was onto something important. Today, later a liberal Democratic senator is invoked by conservatives to explain why African American progress has been so slow. Jason Riley, a senior fellow at the Institute, claims that family structure offers a much more plausible explanation of these outcomes than does residual white racism. Fox News host Bill O'Reilly is more blunt. The reason there is so much violence and chaos in the black precincts is a disintegration of the African American family. He said last year, white people don't force black people to have babies out of wedlock. Now, as difficult as that may be to hear, it's true, right? See, a lot of time we don't like hearing the truth when it comes from somebody outside the race. But it should be no different than if a woman is making a case about men making a case about women, right? It shouldn't matter where it comes from if it's the truth. But we get so wrapped up in race and gender and class and politics, and we get so wrapped up in those things that we automatically get in defensive mode instead of thinking, you know what, is that true what somebody's saying? So the breakup and breakdown of the black family, black men and black women have been at each other's throats for the last few decades, has caused a lot of dysfunction and chaos in the black community. And really have nobody to blame but ourselves. If we continue to keep saying that there is an outside agency, outside factor that is affecting that, right? How black men and black women operate, then do we really want change? They're right up to a point. It's far from optimal for 72% of black children to be born in wedlock. Social ills would diminish if there were more stable two-parent black households. The problem with this line of thinking is that it's incomplete. Worse, it's often used to gloss over intractable reality that continue to hinder black progress. It's true that whites don't force blacks to have children out of wedlock, but it's wrong to suggest that whites bear no responsibility. Poverty is often a result of lack of access to good jobs or any jobs, any discrimination by employers that has stopped in 1965 and hasn't stopped yet. I agree. There's discrimination, job discrimination. We discriminated by how hair looks, etc. Right? But that didn't stop us in the past, in the 60s, beyond this, from creating our own business, from becoming farmers, from making it, building Black Wall Street in multiple cities. Right? So one thing that I don't want us to do as a black culture, as black people, is to make excuses. Right? Where there's a will, there's a way. And then in the face of harsh discrimination, dogs being sicked on us, right? Literally doing Jim Crow, we could not even be around white people like that unless we were serving them, right? And we still find a way to be successful. So I just don't believe in making excuses. Two things can be true at the same time. So we can acknowledge it, work to eradicate it and eliminate it, while still doing what we need to do, which is uplift each other. The impact of drug laws and the harsher treatment black men get from the criminal justice system, meaning that many have records that scare employers away. But research indicates that white applicants with criminal records are more likely to get interviews than blacks without criminal records, which I believe that to be true. But one thing we should also focus on, let's focus on not breaking the law. Can we talk about that? Okay. A lot of the well-paid blue-collar jobs once abundant in cities have vanished. On the other hand, limited the unemployed has long been much higher for black men than for whites. The gap is bigger today. Without decent jobs, these men are not likely to be able to find wives or support families. They are not likely to get married or stay married. If family breakdown causes poverty, poverty also causes family breakdown. I don't disagree with that. Poverty is a huge factor, for sure. African Americans often find it hard to leave blighted neighborhoods. They can find themselves steered away from white communities by real estate agents or rejected by landlords. The Urban Institute reports a fact that ought to shock. The average high-income black person lives in a neighborhood with a higher poverty rate than the average low-income white person. The concentration of poverty in inner cities means many black children are exposed daily to crime and violence. Their turbulent environment makes it hard for them to acquire habits of discipline and self-restraint. I don't disagree with that either. You really have to be motivated individual, an intrinsic motivated individual in order to make it out of the environment that is known for crime and violence and lack of education. So it's possible, right? It's just going to be hard when you used to seeing so much negativity and drama and things of that nature, right? So yes, you got to work harder, but it can be done. But all these factors that he's bringing up, yes, they play a factor. I just don't want it to be a case that we play victim and we let that be an excuse for why we can't do for each other and why we can't be better. Okay. That's my only thing. It's tempting to blame African American social ills on the modern welfare state, which allegedly breeds idleness. But most poor black households are poor despite having at least one adult who works. The welfare reform in the 1990s, which induced many recipients to take jobs, didn't reverse the decline of marriage. Poor black neighborhoods are not the unassisted creation of poor black people, but large and malignant result of factors beyond their control. These places generate a vicious cycle of poverty and dysfunction that mirrors children in desperate conditions. Then we wonder why many of these kids end up unemployed, addicted to drugs, behind bars, or murder. Monet report continued a passage that conservatives rarely quote. 3 centuries of injustice have brought about deep-seated structural distortions in the life of the Negro American. The cycle can be broken only if these distortions are set right. He would be sorry to learn that we have yet to see them right and that his insights are used to rationalize our failure. I agree to a certain extent because we can continue to focus on what has been done to us. We've overcome a lot. And yes, there's discrimination and racism. All those things still exist, right? But we have always been resilient. Always. We've always been hardworking. We've always been capable of doing anything that we need to do. So, yes, we can keep talking about these outside factors, or we can stand up on our square and our own too and be the successful people that we've always been. We always talk about black power and black excellence. Well, let's be that, right? Let's be that and not make up excuses for why. Because what we have to do is we have to focus on, okay, without any outside help, without anybody throwing money our way, how can we build the infrastructure and institutions in order to make sure that our babies see success and our babies don't see dysfunction? And the family is the number one thing that we got to focus on. It's that family. How can we create relationships and marriages and get back to that foundation and make that strong? Because without the black family, we're nothing. We have to get back to understanding why black men and black women are not getting married and are not in a household with each other. That's what we got to focus on. Hey, let's go into our last piece of evidence. So for my last piece of evidence, why black culture is the problem, we're talking about lack of education, or really, in my opinion, is the lack of prioritizing education. Of course, me being a lifelong learner, education is, of course, something that I feel like is very important, right? Without it, I wouldn't be where I am today. So, education is always going to be at the forefront of my mission. That's what I am, that's what I do. So, I'm always do it into my dying days. That sounds very depressing. Sorry. But the lack of education, I believe, is what got us in the peril as a Black community and the issues that we see. Even when we look at public schools, right? And we look at the test results, or how Black students are compared to their white counterparts, particularly Black boys, right? I've been in public education for over a decade, and we know the stats on the how Black boys are suspended compared to other races, and it's just crazy. So there's that, but it's also the fact that so many times I hear grown people saying, you know what, I don't like to read, I might do an audiobook. And I'm not knocking those people, because at least they're trying to get information somehow, right? With the fact that so many adults will say to my face with a straight face and don't think anything is wrong with it, say that they don't like to read, that's an issue. Okay. So I think our lack of focus when it comes to education, when it comes to creating, has been a problem in the Black community and the Black culture, because that means that we're going to always get our information from an outside source. We're not going to get source information is always going to be secondhand, secondary information. So, which means that anybody can tell us anything and we'll believe it. And I think that's what we're seeing, particularly with social media, right? So I want to read this article from a platform called Allison Academy. It's talking about lack of education, cause and effect. And this is not just specifically geared to Black people, Black community. It's just talking about what a lack of education, the effects of it, of not having education can do. So let's get into it. Few things have such diverse and far-reaching consequences on the overall quality of a person's life and that of a community as lack of education. Although it's categorized as one of the fundamental human rights, education nowadays is denied to many children around the world. According to the Broadens Project research, 72 million children do not attend primary school, and a staggering number of 759 million adults are illiterate. That is a lot. The causes that prevent one from getting a quality education are just as severe as the effects that the lack of education generates. This is why societies with poor economies and insufficiently developed education systems are unable to leave the vicious circle without outside intervention or help. Simply put, building a good education system requires a strong economy, and a strong economy in turn requires quality education. Therefore, one of the most important global issues is how to provide every individual in the world with access to education. What causes lack of education? I don't know if I want to read that, but I do want to. Yes, this is really what I want to get to. What are the negative effects of a lack of education? Negative consequences of the lack of education or inadequate instruction are numerous and varied and can impact both the life of the individual and society as a whole. They range from health related reasons, social and economic reasons, each of them generating serious consequences. The longer a person or a community is cut off from education, the more severe long term and irreversible the effects become. 10 consequences of not having access to education: poor health, and I probably won't read in detail all these. Shorter life expectancy. Well, I will. Let me go back. I do want to see what they say about poor health. Some of the basic lessons we learned in primary school are related to taking care of one's own psychophysical health, the importance of hand washing, sexual health, necessity or regular physical activity. All this knowledge is something that stays with the person all their life and is required at school. Okay, that's a good point. Shorter life expectancy. The IMS Fiscal Monitor research showed that education can even affect a person's life expectancy. Specifically in developing economy, the gap between men with higher education and those with secondary or primary education ranging between 4 and 14 years. even larger in some countries. Now that is interesting stat. I did not know that. So poverty. Due to adverse life circumstances, many people lack the tools and means that would enable them to leave poverty behind. Education precisely what provides a person with these tools and means. But in poor communities and countries, either does not exist at all, or if it does, it is inadequate. And this is how people find themselves in the vicious circle of poverty from which they cannot free themselves. Which is very true, because the reason why a lot of women are making more money than men, guess where they're going? They're going to college to get an education, because at least a college degree can guarantee you a certain amount of money. Now, it might not be in the field that you wanted to be, but in a lot of respect, that having a college degree can give you more money. It's good to have on a resume. So, unemployment. Unemployment is tightly linked to poverty. People who lack education or who only finish primary school often work poorly paid jobs or struggle to find any job whatsoever. Simply put, good job reserved for qualified employees, and qualification are primarily acquired through education. And that's true. So we're talking about trade schools and all that, right? We're not just talking about college and university. So the higher your education, the more training you have, which training is education, the more likely you are to have a higher pay. Lower salary, I don't think there's no need to go into that. Gender inequality, women who receive poor education than their male counterparts, often in adverse position. Quality education give women independence, higher salaries, and opportunity to express their views on various social issues. I just mentioned that. Social isolation, illegal activities, of course. Most people, if they don't have the education, they still want a lot of money. So that can lead them to doing things illegal, of course. Poor economy, impossibility of adequate participation in political and social life. Because there was once upon a time where the government did not want their citizens to vote because they were uneducated. Most Americans were illiterate. It makes sense. So what you have right now going is, and even though you might be a person that actually have education, if you're not willing to provide yourself with the means and the education to get informed about the political candidates, you're still uninformed and uneducated, even if you may have an education. So that's absolutely true. So I thought these 10 reasons for the negative effects of education was, most of them was spot on, right? So education is huge when it comes to the Black community and us getting back to where we need to be, where we was, because for a huge chunk of human history, Black people were innovators. Black people was running empires, were very wealthy. We don't talk about that enough. And since we've made things a race thing, that is what it is, right? But I like to look at things as human history. But race is a social construction that we've created. A lot of us go by it. I wish we didn't, but unfortunately, I have to address the truth, or I have to address the reality. So, but education is just one of those ways that our focus on the history, but as well as being innovative, it's just something that we actually gonna always have to keep in our toolbox. So let's get into my closing statement. So why do I feel like Black culture is the problem? It's the music. It's the focus on things that are not good for us. It's the constantly bashing of each other when it comes to Black men and Black women. It is the lack of focus on education. It is the crab in the barrel mentality. It's the fact that we don't unite only when it seems like it benefit us individually, or when there's a major disaster or catastrophe, or just like what we see now with the election coming up. We would come together in times that we feel like it will be historic, just like we did with Barack Obama. Now we're doing with Vice President Harris. So, but we have no true unity because, as I mentioned, we're not building schools, we're not building hospitals. We have a couple black banks, but nothing on the level that we needed to be. So we're not coming together and uniting to build the infrastructure that we need. We'll rather continue to play the blame game and be victim, and blame it on discrimination and racism, while all the times that look how we portray ourselves in the media, on social media. It is our black women that's saying that they don't want no broke man and they got to have a man paying 100% of their bills and stuff like that. So look at how we treat each other. So the black culture is the problem. Now, notice I'm saying the black culture and I'm not saying black people. It's the culture that we have established here in the United States of America that has caused chaos and caused us a problem. Because we didn't always used to be this way. Yes, after we seen the assassination of great black leaders, after we seen the Black Panthers, then we see the arrival of gangs. The fact that we think gangs are cool. We think it's cool to get into beefs and talk about somebody and their family. We think that's cool. We'll do anything for the dollar. This is our culture. This is what we've created. And until we start looking ourselves in the mirror and holding ourselves accountable and not blaming somebody, I might get flack for making this video. And you can challenge my viewpoints, please. But tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm going astray. Please tell me. So, absolutely, the black culture is the problem. And we got to be honest and say it's not working and it hasn't been working. We need to get back to building the black foundation, which is the black family. We need to love on one another. We need to love our black women, and our black women need to love their black men. And stop playing the blame game. Stop being so materialistic. If you say you want a good man and a good woman, you have to describe what that is. What qualities do you seek? But if it's based off of money and material possessions, we're going to continue to suffer the way we are. This is just a word to the wise. And that's today's video. Hey, hopefully I've made my case. Please comment on anything that you heard that you want to give me pushback. I'm all ears. All right. Please make sure you subscribe, like the video, hit that bell so you know when new videos drop. Go get the merch. Hey, you know they out. Okay. The t-shirts, all that. It's gonna be in the link in the description. All right. As always, you are me. Love always, love eternal. And remember, the worst thing you can do is lie to yourself. And I think I made that count.